I'm Sean and I'd like to delve into the settings. Now in the settings there are a wealth of ways of controlling your photography to a much higher level. And they're not for everybody, but here we go, let's dive in. The little wheel on the top there is the settings mode, and hit that. And here are some of the settings. So I'm in manual mode, which exposes the most settings. Now not every setting is available in every mode, so you'll have to check depending on the settings that you're in. But in manual mode they're all there, so that's the easiest way to show you. So there's white balance, which starts with white balance auto, so the camera is deciding for you. And then if you're not satisfied with the white balance, you can choose the particular lighting conditions that you're in. So here I'm actually indoors, so probably under a fluorescent light, that probably gives the right sort of setting for that situation. So that's white balance. That's the ability to turn the flash on and off, or put it onto continuous as well. Particularly useful, so what you see is what you get type photography. The aspect ratio is the shape of the picture, so you can change it from 3x4, 16:9 or square 1x1. The timer is a really useful function. It's particularly useful if you're trying to take pictures of yourself and setting the camera on a tripod and running around. It's got various timings, 3, 5, 10 and 15 seconds. It's also useful if you're trying to do night shots on very long exposures. That way you can press the button and the camera can be completely still while the shot's being taken, because there's a delay there and you've taken your hand off the camera. There's a grid, which I find really useful. I'll just show you what that looks like. That puts these white lines across the picture like this, and it's following the rule of thirds. So for instance, going top to bottom, if it was a landscape, typically you'd like to get, roughly speaking, a top third sky, then the subject matter in the middle, and then the foreground at the bottom. And that is the sort of the most pleasing balance. You can do it that way, or horizontally or vertically. Great, so let's move on to the next feature. And I'll just turn the grid off so that we only deal with one feature at a time. And we'll move on to the histogram. I'll just turn that on, and here we go. So in an ideal world, the histogram wants to be center weighted. That means that the graph should be a bell-shaped curve. Now that's not true of every circumstance, and it's a bit of a fine art, the histogram, to be honest with you, and it's not for everybody, but it's a really useful tool if you're trying to get a balanced shot, and it allows you can see I can change the histogram by making it darker and lighter, and here we go, look, getting it into the center there. That shows that the exposure for this particular scene is actually correct. So that's the histogram. Let's just turn that off. The horizon is another really useful feature. Turn that on. Particularly if you're trying to do something where there's a horizon and you want to get it lined up. You can see this line at the bottom. You'd really want to get it down to 0, so your camera is completely aligned with the horizon, and that way you know that you're taking a perfectly level shot. So that's a really useful feature for doing landscapes. I'll turn that one back off again. HDR. HDR is a feature that basically what it does is takes 3 pictures, one slightly underexposed, one slightly overexposed and one correctly exposed, and it takes the best parts of those 3 pictures and stitches them together into one image. So it's sort of doing the hard work for you there a bit. I'll just turn HDR off and go into format. So there are 2 formats, JPEG, which is the default, and then TIFF. And TIFF files produce pretty chunky size files. They're sort of 30 odd megabytes each, as opposed to sort of 10 to 13 megabytes on a JPEG. So a TIFF file is really useful if you're going to blow the photograph up, or you're looking for extreme detail, or you're trying to manipulate it after you've taken the picture in Photoshop or other photo editing suites. So that's a pretty useful feature for the more advanced photographer. Put it back into JPEG. And the next one is focus. which is the ability in some modes, and it's only on in some modes, to either have auto or manual. And I'll just put it into manual, show you what I mean. So you've got that ability here on a little slider on the side to go in and out of focus, back into the menu system, and then there's the ability to turn the filters off and on. So that is part of the setting system, and I can continue on to other parts of it here. So there's the little wheel system there. The sound is the default here, so you can either make the shutter sounds and the other sounds within the app go up and down. Geo-tagging shows you in the image, exposes to you where you took the picture, so you can either turn that on and off. And the reset button, as I pressed it there, it shows you reset settings. Are you sure? Well, I don't want to do it actually, because I want to keep all my settings. But what that means is if you've changed all your settings and you really don't know where you are, this is a really good ability to switch it back to as you bought it at the beginning. And restoring purchases, which is the final option there, that allows you to, if you buy a new phone or your phone goes off for repair or whatever, you can then download your apps or the other filters that you may have bought quickly and easily from within inside our app. And that really covers most of the options within the settings function. There's two others, and I'm going to cover those in a separate video.